The path of least resistance continues to be to the upside in the SPX and also on the QQQs. And if you want to learn more about my thesis going into next week for the market, make sure to stick all the way through this video. Hey traders, welcome back to Valarenzo Capital. On today's video, we're going to go through the market update. We're also going to take a look at the weekly watch list. So let's just jump right here into the charts, guys. Remember that this information is based just on my personal opinion and is not financial advice. And if at any point of this video you find any value on the information, make sure to subscribe to the channel. So let's start here with the SPX, and I want to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the week on the video that I uploaded to the channel. And we were talking about this very important level of support in the SPX, and that level was 5,700. And what is really interesting is that at the beginning of the week, we tested that level, which coincides with the 8 exponential moving average, something that we were mentioning. And you can see that we had a really strong candle to the upside. And one of my first thoughts was that the market was just going to continue higher as soon as we tested that level. But what is really interesting is that we continue to have that pullback in the market. But if you are a student of the Anchor VWAP, you basically were aware that if you anchor a VWAP to this very important reversal candle that we had in the markets, you can see that that anchor VWAP was a very important level of support. And I continue to be amazed of how accurate is the anchor VWAP. And that is one of the reasons by which I consider that moving averages are more like a zone, but what tends to be really, really accurate between that zone is going to be that anchor VWAP. So you can see right here that we didn't test that 21 exponential moving average exactly, and we didn't found support at that 8 exponential exactly, but we found support somewhere in the middle. And one of the reasons was because that anchor VWAP was at that level. So something super, super interesting, and that is one of the reasons that I continue to use the Anchor VWAP continuously and religiously in my trading. So what are going to be the targets for next week? Let me just open the levels that we were watching, the Fibonacci levels, and let me just make sure that these levels are looking for the next week moves. Okay, so we're good. So one of the first targets that I'm going to be looking, of course, is going to be that 5,800 level. That's going to be the first target for next week. I do think that there is a possibility that we make that 618% extension all the way to 5,840. So pretty interesting price action going into next week. And if we happen to see a pullback early on the week, make sure to anchor a VWAP right here at this little swing low that we had on this previous week. And you can see that that also coincides with that first level of support. So if we happen to pull back once again to that 5,700 level, I think that will be a really nice opportunity to recharge some longs looking for higher prices in the SPX. And something similar if we are taking a look at the Qs. And one of the reasons which I believe that the Qs are going to test these highs right here is because of the pattern that we're starting to see in the markets. You can see that right here we had a really nice base, and it amazed me. I really find it super interesting how the psychology works in the market, because participants tend to get super, super bullish when we have advancing prices, but they tend to get bearish pretty fast, even though the market was just pulling back to some very logical levels of support. You can see right here that we had a pretty controlled pullback in the QQQs, and a lot of people were calling for tops, were calling for crashes, and I understand that it tends to get really uncomfortable. I do get uncomfortable myself, but I find it super useful to always remember that the 8, 21, and 34 exponential moving averages tend to be pretty logical levels of support, and especially if you combine those moving averages with very important levels to anchor your VWAP. So you can see right here that we tested that 21 exponentially, but most importantly, we also tested that anchor VWAP from that very important level of support in the QQQ. So what I'm looking right now is going to be something very, very similar to the SPX. You can see right here that the Qs are testing this level of resistance. If we happen to see a pullback early on the week, the level that I'm going to be looking for support is going to be this first level at 483. That also coincides with a little anchor VWAP anchor from this little swing low that we had on price. So anything around that level, I do think that it's going to be an opportunity. And if looking at these Fibonacci extensions, I think that 500 is a very logical level of resistance going into next week. So that's kind of what I'm looking for the Qs and also the SPX. And if you take a look at some of the other indexes, the DIA is also looking pretty bullish, also found support at that anchor VWAP, which is amazing. And I do think what is really interesting about the DIA is that you kind of have this attempt of a head and shoulders stopping pattern. But what happens is that if we happen to break above this right shoulder here, we tend to see that a lot of birds, that a lot of people that are shorting the market tend to get trapped, and usually those moves tend to happen pretty strongly and pretty fast. So have the DIA also on your watch list. I do think that this is another confirmation that we will continue to see higher prices going into next week in the SPX and the market overall. So that's what I'm looking for. And something that I do want to mention is going to be the UVXY. And if you have been following the channel for a while, you know that I tend to look at the UVXY more than I tend to look at the VIX. One of the reasons is because the UVXY tends to give us patterns that are more similar to those patterns that we see in regular stocks. So what I'm seeing right here in the UVXY is that right now we continue to be above this anchor VWAP. So that's kind of a yellow flag going into next week in the market. You can see that momentum is also positive, but this is what I'm thinking. This is one of the scenarios that I'm playing in my head going into next week, and that is going to be a possible pullback in the UVXY into the first level of support for the week, which also coincides with that anchor VWAP, which is somewhere around 26. My first thought is that probably we're going to see a little bit of advance in the market at the beginning of the week. We're going to test this level of support in the UVXY, and then we're probably going to print a lower high in the UVXY, making a little bit of a higher low in the SPX, and then we're going to see a continuation to the downside of volatility, which could fuel a continuation to the upside in the SPX. So that's basically the market thesis that I'm going with into next week. Now, some of the stocks that I'm going to be watching, and let me show you the full list of the stocks that I have here. And currently, I have positions in UPST, Netflix, NVDA, SPY, Apple, and also the IWM. So currently, I'm holding somewhere around 7 positions. That tends to be kind of when I'm full. I don't like to manage more than 7 positions because I get a little bit distracted. I do a much better job when I have fewer names that I'm trading. So these are the names that I currently have, and let's take a look at some of those setups because I do think that probably you're gonna get a little bit of opportunity going into next week for these names. UPST is a name that I already took profits in. I continue to be in this one. I took profits somewhere around this level right here. We're having this pullback back into those moving averages, and most importantly, back into that anchor VWAP. I do think that there's a really high probability of UPST testing these highs right here, a little bit extended right now from the moving averages and the anchor VWAP, but this one is looking pretty nice. Netflix is looking absolutely fantastic. I was able to start my position at this anchor VWAP at 700 at 709.67, and I'm looking for higher prices here, probably a breakout into next week. That will be pretty cool in Netflix. If you happen to get a early dip in the week into this first level of support somewhere around 710, I do think that is going to be a gift if you want to get into this name as well. I'm thinking of which one is a little bit more actionable because I do think that NVDA is a little bit extended. SPY, you already know the levels that I'm watching. And one that I really like is going to be Apple. I had a trade already in Apple. I was able to take profits right here, but then I got stopped as soon as we broke below this low. But I started a new position on Friday as soon as we were testing this level of support, somewhere around 225. And I really like the week action that we're seeing, and by week I mean the weeks that we're having on the price candle. So you can see right here that there is clearly a level of potential support around 222.50. So I'm expecting I'm expecting Apple to continue to hold this level, and then most likely hitting my first level of risk, a 1 hour multiple at 230, and I'm expecting a possible test of these highs right here, and most likely a new all-time high in Apple. This is one that is looking really, really nice. And one special one, I think that Hood. I don't tend to trade smaller cap names, but Hood is looking really, really nice. What I like about Hood is that we are holding this anchor VWAP right here, which it tends to make the setup a really easy setup to manage risk, because now you understand that if we happen to see a break below this level, then of course Hood does not longer have support of that anchor VWAP, and then most likely it's going to change trend. But for now, Hood is looking pretty awesome. If we have to get a kind of get, if we happen to get a little bit of a pullback at the beginning of the week, somewhere around 22.38, then that's going to be a really nice opportunity to get into this name. If you want to see the full list, you can take a screenshot right here, but basically keeping things pretty simple and then using position sizing as my advantage to play these high probability names going into next week. So basically that's going to be it for the video, guys. I do think that the market is looking pretty awesome. We saw a lot of volatility last week, which tends to be really frustrating, especially if you have a thesis that continues to be valid. But of course, one day is up, one day is down. But you have to understand that it's really important to look at the market objectively and ask yourself, is the setup still valid? And right now the price is just chopping around, or is the setup invalidated? So it's really important to always ask that question and know your levels for the setup. So once again, thank you so much, guys, for your time. I will see you on future videos. Take care. Bye bye.